Hey YouTube. In today's happy video, I want to talk about why I consider misinformation to be the greatest threat facing humanity. Or do I? Maybe that was misinformation. Just kidding. Or was I? Misinformation. See, you don't know. That's the thing about misinformation. It tricks you. And we've all heard a lot these days about, fake news. Donald Trump was kind of the misinformation president, fake news. But sometimes just calling it fake news can prevent us from seeing just how great a problem it actually is. Because it goes deeper than just fake news. It attacks the fundamental concept of truth. And for me, this is an existential crisis. I think there's nothing worse for us as humans than losing the concept of truth. And you might be thinking I'm exaggerating. You might think, well, Dan, fake news is bad, but there's no way it's worse than, let's say, COVID-19. That reason we're all inside right now, that reason the economy is tanking, that reason we're not seeing our friends and our family and everything has gone crazy. That seems like a pretty big existential crisis. And then some other people would say, well, yes, that's an existential crisis, but how about climate change? That thing scientists have been telling us is going to destroy the world in 50 to 100 years. That thing that we all need to act right now before it's too late. The people focused on climate change, they're just like, COVID-19, that's like flavor of the month, existential crisis. That's having its 15 minutes of fame. But climate change, this is the one that's really going to get us. So, at first glance, it seems like either of those problems, especially climate change, is a bigger threat than, misinformation and fake news. But the thing about misinformation is it affects our ability to solve all other problems. I mean, think about COVID-19. Think about how confused everyone was at the beginning and how people didn't know, should you wear masks? What's going on? What's the proper etiquette? How do we deal with this? There was so much misinformation, there still is actually, that we can't have a unified response. When you're looking at climate change, well, it's perhaps even more clear how misinformation has held us back. Even today, when virtually all the scientists are saying it's very clear, the evidence is here, climate change is happening, you still have people calling it a hoax, including Donald Trump, the king of fake news and misinformation. In fact, his presidency could be remembered as a pivotal moment in the history of misinformation, when it went from being just kind of something for internet trolls to being in the mainstream. He didn't make America great again, but he made misinformation great again. And misinformation is definitely mainstream. But of course, misinformation has always been around. All through history, there have been people fighting against untruths. Lies, I guess would be another word for that. I mean, I think back to even the most fundamental, obvious things we consider to be true today, like the fact that the sun is at the center of the solar system and not the earth. Well, a long time ago, everyone thought it was the earth. And a little guy named Galileo came along with his telescope and said, actually, I think it's the sun that's at the center. And at that time, it was the Catholic Church who was like, you're crazy. And they put him in jail. He went to jail for daring to say that it was not that it was not the earth at the center of the solar system. He was a victim of misinformation, I guess. He was also a victim of just the powerful people who wanted things to remain one way, who wanted everyone to think one thing and not to question that belief. And that raises another question, which is how do we deal with misinformation? Especially when that misinformation is very widely believed. And the only answer I can really come up with, and I thought about this before making this video, the only answer I can come up with is to speak the truth. in whatever way we can, even when it's very difficult to do so, even when it's very controversial to do so, or very, people can think you're crazy. People can think that you are a lunatic, as they did with Galileo. And sometimes you are. That's the thing about searching for truth in a world that has a lot of misinformation, is sometimes you will be wrong. Sometimes when you're playing with fire, you get burnt. And in many ways, it's easier to just not think about these things. In many ways, it's easier to just believe what you're told and to think, okay, you know what? The world is so confusing. There's so many voices now. Everyone thinks they have the answer. All these conspiracies out there. How do I know what's true? So I don't care anymore. There's no truth. Or I don't care anymore. I'm just going to do whatever, my smart friend tells me. They seem to know what's going on. But the problem with that is a lot of people who think they know, who seem like they know what's going on, actually, like I don't even know what's going on. I'm talking to you in this video, but frankly, there's a lot of things I don't know anything about. If you start asking me about, biology, something like that, I might say something like, yeah, plants, they grew out of smaller plants or something, but I don't actually have an idea what I'm talking about. And like 90% of people are like that. They're just kind of like saying words out of their mouth, but they haven't thought about it deeply enough to know if they're speaking the truth or not. But getting back to the threat against humanity, getting back to that joyful topic, once you go down this path and you start thinking about how difficult it is to find truth in this atmosphere of misinformation, it shows you how difficult it is to solve problems, how difficult it is to, either stop a pandemic or stop climate change or to do any great collective effort. Because, well, first of all, people are very, I was going to say people are very gullible to misinformation, but I wouldn't even say you're gullible necessarily. You're just kind of a product of this age we're living in. Because frankly, a lot of people who are working jobs don't have time to triple check all the news sources that they're seeing on their Facebook feeds and things like that. So it's so easy for these websites, which are trying to seem legitimate, they might even think they are. They might even think they have the truth, but sometimes they're just sharing conspiracy theories and sharing nonsense. And people share that because it either looks believable, or it surprises them, or it confirms some suspicion they had, like, these immigrants, they really are bad people. But you don't even know who that news source is, or why they're publishing it, or who's funding it, or like what their ideas are. And not everyone has a research team behind them to help them solve these problems. So I don't necessarily think people are gullible for falling for misinformation, but I do think it's one of the greatest threats we're faced with. And my answer is to search for your own truth, but also to be very open to questioning your own truth. And just admitting when you're wrong, having some humility and not being afraid to admit if you've fallen for misinformation, or admit if you've, not even misinformation, just admit if you were wrong about like a social issue, like, I think part of the problem is we have a lot of people in the society who grew up with certain beliefs just because everyone around them believed that, and they never thought much about it. And maybe you get to 20 or 30 or 40 years old and you realize, you know what, I actually had a very ignorant perspective on people from other cultures, or people with different lifestyles than I have, or people who are more poor or more rich. Like, sometimes you just grow older and your perspective changes. You need to allow yourself to change and to grow. It's part of being human. And if we don't allow that part of being human, and if we're very quick to judge other people, to ridicule other people, to attack other people for different beliefs than us, for different beliefs than us, then we're no better than the Catholic Church attacking Galileo for saying that the Earth was not the center of the solar system. Because we need to, whether he's right or not wrong, I'm not saying everyone out there on Facebook saying random nonsense is Galileo, but I am saying that when someone is making an honest effort to explain something in a way you haven't thought about, make an effort to understand it. I'm not saying you have to agree, I'm not saying you need to adopt their perspective, but don't just shut them down and say like, that's fake news, that's misinformation. Because part of the problem with misinformation is calling everything misinformation. Yeah, will this video even be allowed on YouTube? They'll probably be like, this is misinformation because I've said that word so many times. I don't know. But this is my rant for the night. These are some thoughts on misinformation. And yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think about this topic. Have you thought about it? Have you noticed it more in your own daily life, on social media, or just conversations with friends? Yeah, let me know what you think. And yeah, fun fact. This is actually my second time recording this video because the first time I had like pasta sauce all over my face because I had spaghetti right before making this video. That is not misinformation. Or is it? No, I'm a very messy eater.